Ever since speedrunners began beating Kanto games as fast as possible, Squirtle has always been the one sitting on the throne of fastest starter Pokemon to beat the game with. And it wasn't until nearly a decade later that speedrunners decided to try something new, something that would light a passionate fire in the community in more ways than one. But to begin this story, we have to go back to August of 2016. This time frame is in an era of Pokemon speedrunning that changed and defined every Pokemon speedrun due to the switch from using IGT timing to RTA timing. RTA stands for real-time attack, and to be honest, I don't know why it's named like this, but what I do know is that it translates to using an external timer to time a speedrun, as opposed to using an internal game timer that many games provide. Before August of 2016, if a game had an internal timer, then it was required to be used to time a Pokemon speedrun because of the rules of an old website called Speed Demos Archive. Speed Demos Archive was essentially what Speedrun.com is today, a place where people could submit and show off their speedruns. And SDA's logic for this rule was that an in-game timer would be more accurate than any external timing methods. To their credit, computers were running on Windows 98 and XP at the time of this website's dominance in the early 2000s. But saying that in-game timers were accurate is just not true for so many games that were speedran during this era. Especially in Pokemon games where a speedrun could be nearly a minute faster in real time than other runs and still be tied on the leaderboard because of the in-game clock's inaccuracies. And with the mandatory use of in-game timers integrated into the rules, the development of almost every Pokemon speedrun was halted in multiple ways. The biggest reason being that saving and resetting was prohibited, all thanks to the in-game timer not having the ability to track the time it takes to save and reset. And for FireRed Leaf Green, not being able to save for the trash can puzzle was a massive wall not many were willing to deal with, since one of the few ways you could pass this awful puzzle with any sort of consistency is through saving after you find the first trash can, then resetting if you miss the second one. But with enough time passing, many folks eventually did pick up the game, including runners like Exarian and _Poi. Underscore is known for a lot of Pokemon code expertise on top of their routing skills, while Exarian ushered in the RTA era of Pokemon games with a ton of optimized reroutes on top of snagging world records in multiple Generation 1 through 3 Pokemon games. But before diving into the RTA era, there was a time around February of 2016 that a certain Pokemon began to gain traction, and it was _Poi who brought the beginning of the Charmander era FireRed Leaf Green speedruns to the masses. Underscore initially developed a route based around Charizard's massive power and speed. Running a plus special attack nature felt like a no-brainer, with the Blaze ability making the special attacking fire moves the focus of the route. But even with such massive power from special attacks, physical moves played a pretty important role too. Moves like Aerial Ace and Rock Slide were pretty huge and useful for fights such as Koga, where Aerial Ace negated his accuracy lowering moves, and Rock Slide was nice for Blaine since it's a super effective rock move for his awful fire types. Unfortunately, it's hard to gauge the times Underscore got with Charmander, since the only surviving footage of his runs are clips where he resets because he couldn't find a good enough Charmander, showing times of about 220.
No starter.
This was about 15 minutes slower than the current world record that used Squirtle. But the thing about the world record at the time was that it wasn't the greatest run.
How did he spin? What in the world?
Exarian himself wasn't exactly satisfied with it either, but found Squirtle to be a very boring Pokemon to beat the game with, and didn't really want to grind it any further than he already had. So when he noticed _Poi trying out Charizard, Exarian took it upon himself to optimize the Fire Lizard in hopes that it would make FireRed fun again. And while he didn't exactly conclude that Charmander was faster than Squirtle either, this just felt right at the time. So slowly but surely, the race was on to make Charmander as fast fast as possible. And one of the best ways Exarian could think to do that was by eliminating all physical moves from the route except for Wing Attack. Because all Charmander truly needed to shine was level up moves like Flamethrower, Ember, Wing Attack, and the TM for Fire Blast to dominate the game. With Charizard's base special attack, it can even obliterate opponents that resist fire moves through brute force alone. And with such high base speed on top of it, many threats that Squirtle couldn't outspeed were just dead on arrival. But that wasn't the only strategy that gave Charmander an edge, because Charmander could learn HM moves such as Fly and Cut once it evolved into Charizard, making it so that Charmander could learn one of those moves instead of being forced to catch two separate Pokemon for the sole purpose of HM usage. And with all these strategies combined, Exarian got a 207 just in time for the RTA era to be ushered into existence with a fun Charmander route that was now only 2 minutes off of the world record. And this got a lot of people interested in FireRed speedruns as a whole. But what I really think made the difference for folks just getting into this run was the fun risk of the late game on top of Charmander's ability to get past Brock much smoother than Squirtle ever could. The thing about Squirtle is it's quite infamous for its poor early game because of the low HP strats that are practically required to get through Brock's gym if you want to have a good enough time. Since without low HP, you can't take advantage of Torrent and will end up losing minutes to this entire gym. Whereas Charmander is forced to fight every single trainer inside of Viridian Forest just for enough EXP to get access to Metal Claw on Brock's Onix. And with the combination of Growl and Metal Claw, Onix will never go for its rock move unless Charmander is faster or in KO range, giving Charmander an easy 5-turn fight to KO Brock and letting you play more of the game since Brock is way easier for Charmander. But even with the ability to play more of the game out, this route's risks were still quite massive after this point. These risks came in the form of water and rock type Pokemon early on into the game, because by choosing Charmander, you're giving your rival a hard to KO Squirtle and will eventually have to take on Misty. But if you land just enough Mega Kicks on them, the satisfaction of getting past these threats is oh so worth the risk. As for rock Pokemon, the entirety of Rock Tunnel is a massive threat to the life of Charmander, because every single rock type Pokemon that doesn't die in one hit happens to have the move Magnitude in their slots. With enough HP, you're pretty much set to take most magnitudes of any level. But with the threat of Magnitude 9 and 10 as a possibility, it becomes pretty hard to get through the other side of the tunnel.
What are you gonna do, Geodude? Jackass, come on. Oh God! Oh God! Oh!
And the difficulty doesn't stop there, because a lot of the strategies with Charizard are based around how much your opponent will let you set up. With how much frailer Charizard is compared to Blastoise, Charizard ends up losing a lot more HP when it gets hit with an attack. And if too much or too little damage is done to Charizard, the strategies will typically change. With too much HP, you're forced to set up a bit more to make up for the fact that you're not in Blaze. With too little HP, you're likely to set up less and have to use moves like Fire Blast instead, risking your entire run on a potentially nasty miss. Luckily, Fire Blast is blessed with an 85% accuracy, which is way more than the likes of Blizzard. But it's still something speedrunners have to worry about when using this powerful but risky move. And with all these risks already at play, speedrunners needed to find some safety to navigate through the end of the game, especially for trainers such as Lorelei, who are arguably the biggest threats to a FireRed speedrun that uses Charizard. The existence of Surf on Lorelei's Dugong lead being part of that threat. While you could do a slow setup with Water Absorbed Lapras to get it to stop spamming Surf, since the AI will think that water moves no longer work against your Pokemon, it ends up being pretty slow to get through the fight. So instead, Pokemon speedrunner and Charmander enthusiast Snorms found a massive solution inside of the Safari Zone through the power of the sun. By abusing Sunny Day on Lorelei, you can smoothly get through her biggest threats, because not only does Sunny Day boost the power of fire moves, but it also weakens water moves. and makes the AI want to get rid of the sun if they have a weather move in their inventory. This makes the setup for Charizard incredibly safe and stops her from obliterating you near the end of the game. But the thing about Charizard and FireRed Leaf Green is that every Elite Four member is terrible to deal with. Many of their ace Pokemon are damage ranges, even if you set up as fast and as little as possible. And honestly, this is probably the reason why many loved Charmander so much back in the day. Since not having a guaranteed path to victory can be quite exhilarating when you finally overcome the odds. And for Exarian, this took quite a while to overcome. He even had runs that would likely have changed the landscape of FireRed speedruns for better or for worse.
Oh, I didn't even get the range. Sure.
Okay, here we go. Need to hit this fire blast. Okay. Cool. Well, played it correctly at least. That's all I needed to do to win the fight is hit that fire blast.
But these runs were not meant to be the ones to dethrone Squirtle from the throne of FireRed Leaf Green speedruns. That is, until this one.
That was so awkward. That miss was so bad, the Hyper Beam miss. It would have been perfect if he didn't miss. It's gonna be so fucking close now. I need to hit a +4 range with Fire Blast on Dragonite though. So this is still really risky. Alright, here we go. 82%. I don't think I can afford to do super safe champ. Yes to not critical. To 3 hit the range. 65%. 65% again. Might be it. That might be it. I think that's it. I think that's it. Even crit shit can't stop it. That's it. Obviously not a good time, but that's okay. We can get that later. We have dethroned the turtle and replaced him with a ferocious lizard with amazing special attack.
And with this run complete, Exarian had finally done it. Squirtle was officially dethroned after years of being on top. But unfortunately for Charmander, it was never meant to keep the throne or even take it in the first place because Bulbasaur, I'm just kidding. Squirtle was always the fastest Pokemon from the beginning and was overall just a product of bad timing. Because the many people who looked into Charmander had a massive distaste for Squirtle. To them, Charmander just had way cooler strategies with enough potential to claim the throne of an underdeveloped speed game that folks didn't really care for until rules had finally changed just enough to make a stupid puzzle a bit more fair. And by the time the rules did change, more folks became interested in Charmander than they ever were in Squirtle. And when speedrunners have more interest in one thing over another, the potential of some Pokemon can be overlooked. Which is exactly what happened to Squirtle, because the truth is that 205 from Exarian was the only time Charmander ever held the world record. Even with the immense amount of interest that came from its dominance, it was overall just too hard to finish runs with its high risk, high reward strategies. And with folks like me still developing strategies for Squirtle while Charmander speedrunners were having fun, it was only a matter of time before Charmander tragically fell from grace at the prime of its popularity. But the rest of that story is for another video. So subscribe for more content like this video, and I'll see you next time for some more Pokemon speedrun news and content.